Hey everyone, before we dive into this insane story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because what I'm about to tell you is absolutely unbelievable, and you're not going to want to miss a second. My name is James Harris, I'm 32, I work in IT, and I've always been the kind of guy who prefers a quiet life. But sometimes curiosity gets the better of you. A few months ago, I decided to take a solo trip to the Nevada desert. I'd been working nonstop, stressed out, and I thought a few days under the stars would be the perfect escape. I rented a small SUV, packed some essentials, and drove miles away from the nearest town until all I could see were sand dunes, cacti, and a sky littered with stars. It was peaceful. Too peaceful, actually. By nightfall, I parked near a dry riverbed and set up a small campfire. The air was crisp, almost unnervingly still. I was scrolling through my phone, trying to get a few photos of the stars, when I noticed something strange in the sky. At first, I thought it was an airplane. Then, I realized there was no blinking red or green light, just a solid, hovering object that didn't make a sound. It was enormous. I squinted, adjusting my eyes, and the shape became clearer. Circular, metallic, with faint, pulsating lights along its rim. My heart started racing. I told myself it was probably a drone or some kind of experimental military craft, but deep down, I knew this was something else. Something I couldn't explain. Suddenly, my campfire flickered violently, as if the wind had picked up, but the air was perfectly still. Then came the sound. A low, vibrating hum that seemed to penetrate my chest. I froze. The object moved closer, gliding silently, almost effortlessly over the dunes. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my legs felt like they were glued to the ground. That's when I noticed it. The sand around my SUV was shifting in impossible patterns, like invisible legs were skimming just beneath the surface. I grabbed my flashlight, pointing it at the object, and the beam reflected off its metallic surface in a way that made my stomach turn. It wasn't just close, it was observing me. I tried to speak, to call out, but my voice caught in my throat. And then, out of nowhere, a beam of light shot from the bottom of the craft, striking the ground near me. The heat from it was intense, making the sand hiss and smoke slightly. Panic surged, and I jumped into my SUV, fumbling with the keys. I drove in a blind panic, tires skidding over the soft sand, heart pounding. But no matter which direction I turned, the craft followed. Its movements were unnaturally precise, almost predatory. I tried calling 911, but my phone showed no signal, just the eerie silence of the desert night. Hours, or maybe minutes, it's hard to tell, passed with me zigzagging through the dunes, the hum never leaving my ears, the light never leaving my rearview mirror. And then, just when I thought I couldn't handle the fear any longer, the craft vanished. Just like that. No trace, no sound, nothing. I stopped, breathing heavily, sweat and tears mixing on my face, and laughed nervously, thinking maybe I'd hallucinated the entire thing. But that relief was short-lived, because when I checked the back seat of my SUV, there was something that shouldn't have been there. A small, metallic object, about the size of my fist, glowing faintly with the same pulsating lights I'd seen on the craft. I didn't touch it at first, just stared. The rational part of me wanted to throw it away, but another part, the part that couldn't explain any of this, knew it was the key to understanding what had just happened. And that's when I felt it. A sudden, sharp jolt through my body, as if something had reached inside me. My vision blurred, the world tilted, and for a split second, I lost all sense of time and space. When I opened my eyes again, I was no longer alone in the desert. The craft was back, closer this time, and a ramp had extended from its underside. I didn't have time to think. Before I could even scream, I was lifted, weightless, the ground disappearing beneath me. And that's how it began. The night I was taken by something not of this world. The inside of the craft was nothing like I imagined. No flashing buttons, no metallic clanging. Just a vast, dimly lit chamber that seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. The walls were smooth, almost liquid in appearance, glowing faintly with a soft bluish light. Gravity didn't feel right. I floated slightly above the floor, my limbs unresponsive at first, like my body was no longer entirely my own. And then I saw them. Not creatures like you'd see in movies, no grotesque claws or exaggerated heads, but tall, slender beings, maybe 8 feet tall, with elongated limbs and pale, almost translucent skin that shimmered faintly in the bluish light. Their eyes were enormous, black and reflective, yet filled with something that felt intelligent. They didn't speak, at least not in a language I could recognize, but I understood them in some inexplicable way, like thoughts being pushed directly into my mind. Do not fear. You are safe. Observe. That was the message, clear as day, and it sent chills down my spine. I tried to respond, but again, no words came out. One of them extended a hand, or what looked like a hand, toward me, and I felt a strange warmth, a tingling sensation that started in my chest and spread throughout my body. Suddenly, images started flashing in my mind. Earth from space, rotating slowly, oceans glinting under sunlight, cities glowing at night, people living their lives unaware. Then came something more personal. Moments from my own life, my childhood, my parents, the choices I'd made, the regrets I'd carried quietly. It was invasive, intimate, yet somehow not malicious. And then, an image I didn't recognize. A future I had never lived, a place I had never seen. I was standing in a city that looked part human, part not. Towering structures, lights that defied physics, and beings moving alongside humans, coexisting in a way that made no sense. The sensation was overwhelming. I gasped mentally, almost begging for it to stop, but it didn't. Instead, it shifted. The beings showed me something darker. Potential disasters, conflicts, environmental collapse, humans on the brink of annihilation, but also glimpses of solutions, innovations, moments of connection and understanding that could prevent catastrophe. It was as if they were offering me a choice. See, remember, share. I tried to comprehend it all, but my mind struggled to keep up. And then it happened, the experience changed from passive to active. I felt myself moving, being guided through the corridors of the craft, my body responding to their invisible instructions. I passed other rooms, some empty, some filled with strange devices, tubes of liquid that glowed in shifting colors, panels that seemed to operate without touch, displays that rearranged themselves in midair. One of the beings guided me to a chamber that felt different. There was a low hum, deeper than any sound I'd heard before, vibrating through my chest, and in the center, a pool of what looked like liquid mercury. I felt an urge impossible to resist, to lean over it. As I did, the reflection changed. Not just my own, but something more. I saw myself older, changed, altered, a version of me that had experienced things no human should. And then I saw a mark on my arm, faint but glowing. A symbol I didn't recognize, etched into my skin as if by invisible hands. Panic surged, but before I could react, one of the beings touched my shoulder. A calm, gentle insistence. It is necessary. You will understand later. The next thing I knew, I was back in my SUV, sitting in the desert, the sun just beginning to rise over the horizon. The craft was gone, leaving no trace, not even tire marks in the sand. My arm hurt, tingling, and when I looked, the symbol was still there, faintly glowing. My SUV was exactly where I'd left it. My phone had signal again, and I had no memory of how long I'd been gone. Minutes? Hours? Days? I had no clue. I wanted to call someone, anyone, but I feared what I'd say. How do you explain being taken by something impossible? I drove back to the nearest town in a daze, half expecting someone to stop me, to question my sanity, but life went on as if nothing had happened. Except for me. I felt different, changed in ways I couldn't yet understand. That night, back in a motel room, I stared at the symbol on my arm and knew that whatever had happened, it wasn't over. It was just the beginning. And then my phone lit up, an unknown number. A single message: "We will be in touch. Be ready." I dropped the phone, trembling, realizing that the pursuit hadn't ended. Not by a long shot. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those beings, the city that wasn't mine, the symbol glowing faintly on my arm. I tried rationalizing it. Stress, exhaustion, maybe some desert-induced hallucination, but deep down I knew it was real. And then, a week later, it happened again, in a way I hadn't expected. I was walking home from work, just an ordinary Tuesday, when the sky darkened unnaturally. No clouds, just a shadow that moved against the sun. My instincts screamed at me, and before I could even look up properly, the same low hum filled the air. The ground vibrated beneath my feet. I froze, heart pounding. And then, just like before, the light came down. Not at the desert this time, but on a quiet street in my city. People around me started screaming, running, but I felt a tug, a pull I couldn't resist. My body lifted, almost effortlessly, and within seconds I was aboard the same craft again. Nothing had changed. The glowing walls, the smooth floors, the silent beings observing me. Only this time their message was different. "It is time to learn. You are ready." They guided me through chambers I hadn't seen before. One with holographic maps of Earth, cities marked with red and green dots, indicating events I couldn't yet comprehend. Another with floating panels showing genetic sequences, chemical formulas, technologies far beyond human capability. It was overwhelming, but I began to notice something about myself. I could understand it almost instinctively. Patterns, systems, causes, and effects, they all made sense in a way they never had before. It was as if they were expanding my mind, wiring me into a larger network of understanding. Then came the final chamber, the one that made my blood run cold. In the center was a glass-like sarcophagus, inside which floated a human form, perfectly preserved yet completely unfamiliar. I felt a connection, a recognition I couldn't explain. One of the beings gestured toward it. "This is what awaits if humans fail. Observe carefully." And suddenly, I saw the world as they saw it years into the future. Wars over water, cities abandoned, skies choked with smoke, humans clinging to survival while the beings I had met moved among them, intervening occasionally, guiding, influencing, preventing total annihilation. And then I saw myself, not as James Harris, the IT worker, but as a messenger, a carrier of knowledge, marked by the symbol, tasked with warning others, teaching, sharing what I had witnessed. Panic surged through me. Me? An ordinary man? Could I possibly shoulder something like that? But there was no time to doubt. They pressed a hand to my chest, and in that instant, memories, knowledge, visions, all poured into me. I understood calculations, trajectories, possible futures. I felt every disaster, every solution, every consequence, like a living map of probabilities unfolding inside my brain. I nearly collapsed, overwhelmed by the weight of it, but somehow I adapted. And then, just like before, I was back on Earth, standing in the street as if nothing had happened. People were staring at me, terrified, but I barely noticed. My arm burned where the symbol glowed brighter than ever. I realized I was different, changed, more than changed. A part of me now belonged to something larger, something I couldn't explain to anyone. Over the next days, I started noticing strange occurrences. Lights in the sky, objects moving impossibly, whispers in my mind guiding me. Sometimes, I would find myself driving for hours, following a route I didn't consciously choose, ending up in remote places where I would witness things no one else saw. It was exhausting, terrifying, and exhilarating all at once. And then the message came again, this time not through a device, but through thought, direct and insistent. Prepare. The next phase begins. I didn't know what that meant, but I felt it in every fiber of my being. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, symbol glowing faintly under my sleeve, and wondered, what had I become? A man marked by beings beyond comprehension, chosen to witness, to understand, to act. The reality I had known was gone. My ordinary life, my small worries and routines, they meant nothing now. And yet, I had no choice but to continue, to embrace this role, even as fear gnawed at me. Because deep down, I knew one thing with terrifying clarity. The pursuit had never stopped. The moment I'd been taken in the desert wasn't a random encounter. It was the beginning of a path I couldn't escape, and every action I took from this point forward would ripple far beyond me, beyond Earth, in ways I could not yet imagine. The days that followed were a blur. I had no control over my schedule, my actions, or even my thoughts at times. The symbol on my arm pulsed, a constant reminder of the link I shared with them. Sleep became fragmented. Reality felt like a fragile membrane I was constantly pressing against. One evening, the same low hum returned, not through sound, but through my own mind. I felt the pull again, stronger than ever, and knew it was time. I was lifted, weightless, transported aboard the craft without even thinking about it. This time, there was no waiting, no observing, just immediate purpose. The beings led me to a chamber I had never seen before. In the center, a massive, transparent globe hovered, filled with swirling lights, colors I didn't have words for. It was alive, almost breathing, and I felt its consciousness probing mine. "This is your task," they transmitted, the words echoing directly inside my mind. "You must ensure balance. You will witness, guide, and intervene where necessary." I realized then that their previous lessons, the visions, the probabilities, the warnings, were preparation. I wasn't simply a witness anymore. I was an agent, a human tethered to something incomprehensible, capable of changing the course of events. Fear surged, but alongside it came an unexpected clarity. I understood patterns, consequences, subtle interactions that no ordinary mind could perceive. I could see solutions where there were none, anticipate danger, and prevent disaster before it even began. The beings didn't explain how or why, they didn't need to. Their expectations were clear, and I accepted them, because resistance seemed pointless against forces so vast, so alien, yet eerily precise. Then came the hardest part. Leaving. I was returned to Earth, standing in the middle of the desert where it all began, under the same stars, but nothing looked the same. I could feel every ripple of the world, every thread of consequence tied to my actions. I was no longer merely James Harris, the man who wanted a quiet escape. I was a node in a network larger than humanity itself, a conduit for knowledge beyond comprehension. Over the following weeks, I tried to act normally. I went back to work, saw friends, even pretended to sleep at night, but every decision, every movement, carried weight I couldn't share. Occasionally, the craft returned, silently observing, guiding subtly, and the symbol on my arm pulsed like a heartbeat, reminding me that I was marked. One night, the message came clearly, not as a suggestion, but as an instruction. Act now. Prevent what is imminent. I found myself in a remote part of the city where a massive industrial accident was about to occur, an event that would have claimed dozens of lives. I didn't know how I knew, I just did. Following the impulse, I intervened, shutting down a valve, redirecting pressure, saving lives in a way that made no logical sense to anyone else. Later, I realized that what I had prevented was just one of many potential catastrophes. Every day since then, I've been walking a tightrope between the ordinary and the extraordinary, between fear and purpose. The world continues, oblivious to the forces at play, and to most, I am just another man. But I carry the weight of knowledge and responsibility that no human should ever bear. The craft still visits, still watches, and I know one day, I may be called again for a purpose I cannot yet imagine. And yet, amidst the terror and isolation, I have come to accept it. I am no longer just a man who was taken. I am a witness, a guide, a guardian in ways most could never comprehend. Every night when I look up at the stars, I know they are there, watching, waiting, and I am theirs in a way I cannot escape. But I also know this, what they have given me, terrifying as it is also a gift, a chance to see, to act, to influence. The desert taught me fear. The craft taught me purpose. And the symbol on my arm is my reminder, my bond, my curse, and my mission. I am James Harris, and the night I was taken was not the end of my life. It was the beginning of something far larger than I can fully understand. Something that will shape the world, quietly, invisibly, through choices only I can make. And no one else will ever believe me.